Your surgical oncologist is the person that plans the surgery. The day of chemo would go a little bit like this. It's in my arm. You hear the machine going off every once in a while. This is where the incision starts. It goes all the way down. There's a tube. This is not to scare anyone who is about to start their chemo, only because every person reacts differently. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Comeback Podcast with your girl, Shavona Lakeisha. So it's been long awaited because of some people, no tea, no shade. But in this podcast, we are going to talk about my chemo journey. Where we left off, we talked about when I got my diagnosis, what my diagnosis was, and what that meant. I got my diagnosis in January. So I started I had to do like an MRI in the first week of February. And then I did my very first chemo session, February 27th. One of the things that I created to help keep my mind together was I created a folder. It has all my appointment notes in here, all of my tests, any questions that I have. And I got it. I don't know if y'all can see this. I got it like organized with like tabs. So we're gonna go over. So the type of chemo drugs that I was taking, they are called, the first one is Taxotere. And the second one is called carboplatin. And then because of the type of breast cancer that I had, like I mentioned before, I had to do a year's long worth of shots. The shots were called Herceptin. They have another name. Please don't ask me to pronounce it because I can't. But they gave me like a pamphlet that talked about all of the medications that I would be taking, what the side effects were, who to contact if I had any questions. So I did. God, I have everything in here. I haven't looked at this in a while. I'm sorry. Before I started my chemo rather, I had to take a steroid. It's called dexamethasone. And what that was used for was essentially to keep my body from going into what I would like to call crash out mode after chemo. Did it work? For the most part, yes. The day of chemo would go a little bit like this. Come in, I would do my labs. They would see what my numbers were. Then I would meet with my oncologist, my medical oncologist, and she would go over the labs. And the medical oncologist is the person that prescribes the chemo drugs or the treatment plan. Your surgical oncologist is the person that plans the surgery and the type of surgery that you're going to be having. So I said Taxotere, carboplatin, and Herceptin. So my first chemo session was, we got there at 9 a.m. We did not leave until like 3:30, 4 p.m. And the reason for that is because they wanted to administer my medication slowly, just to ensure that I wasn't going to have a reaction during that process. We'll get back to that. And so far, like the whole process was really like boring, honestly, because you're sitting there with, I didn't have my port placed for my first chemo session. So it's in my arm. You hear the machine going off every once in a while. You're in a reclining chair, and my mom never allowed me to have a chemo session by myself. So the whole idea of like me taking a nap or reading a book or watching a movie, that was not an option. Unfortunately, there was always somebody there sitting next to me, keeping me company, talking, the whole shebang, which I'm not knocking, but it would have been nice to watch a movie or something. But anyway, I didn't have a reaction during the first chemo session. I went home. Everything was fine up until around 9 p.m. And this is not to scare anyone who is about to start their chemo, only because every person reacts differently. For me, and we didn't figure this out until after I was already done with treatment. I have an autoimmune disease. What it is, we still don't know because I'm waiting to hear back from the rheumatologist. But whenever I would finish chemo, what would happen is my joints, so anywhere that there was a joint, my neck, fingers, my wrists, elbow, ankles, knees, everything would kind of just lock up. And the best way that I can describe it is if you've ever sat on the toilet for a very long time and you get that like staticky feeling in your legs, like as you're standing up, that's what it feels like throughout my whole body. But it's also pain associated with that feeling. So that happened the first chemo session. I was down for like 3 days after that. No vomiting though. No because, you know, when you see TV shows regarding anybody getting cancer treatment, the first thing that they talk about is, oh, they're nauseous, oh, they're sick all the time. I didn't have that yet. Before the second chemo session, I got my port placed. I have named her Portisha because she's going to be with me for quite some time. So I thought I would at least give her a name. This was done through interventional radiology, where the port is essentially placed inside of my jugular vein. And when medication or labs are done, it's done through this little, you can kind of see it here. So this is where the incision starts. It goes all the way down. There's a tube right there. And then that's where the port's at. Dot. The reason that the port is in is because if I had continued to do the chemo through my arm, it would have damaged the veins there, and we don't need that. This doesn't hurt being accessed all the time. If it's done fast and appropriately, it doesn't really bother me. The reason that I have to keep it so long is because, once again, your medical oncologist is the person that prescribes the chemo treatment, and this is a part of my treatment. She wants me to have the port for 5 years. So we're on year 2. We got a couple more to go. The second chemo session I had wasn't that bad. Same setup. I do fine during the session. I get home, and then that's when I'm down for the count. Oh, I also forgot to mention, I'm sorry. The day after I would do chemo, so like I did my chemo sessions on a Tuesday. On Wednesday, I would go back to the cancer center and they would give me another shot. Well, I'm assuming it was like a steroid shot. I think it was also listed as dexamethasone. But things didn't start getting rocky until like my third chemo session. And that is when all hell broke loose. So because I did so well the first 2 chemo sessions, they made the decision to speed up, because their chemo drugs are on like a timed drip, or speed rather. They decided to speed it up so that we can get it done a little bit faster. And I started to have a reaction to the chemo. So I would get really hot. My face would get flushed. My back would start hurting. It would feel almost like trapped gas, but not really. So I had to have more steroids. They would give me Pepsid. They would give me Benadryl just to kind of settle my body. And this went on for like 2 or 3 chemo sessions before they finally figured out what the regimen was. If you're doing chemo at any point in time and you start to feel discomfort, whether it's in your chest, in your back, in your port, in your arm, anywhere, you should have a little white button attached to your suite, whether it's attached to your bed or on the wall. Please don't be afraid to hit that little white button. Now, granted, it's going to be a lot of people coming up in there looking at you crazy. It's perfectly fine. They're there to help you, but never be too prideful to hit that button. Prior to chemo, and I wasn't sure if I talked about this, I was offered to do, I can't even think about it, cold capping. There's a process where you can keep your hair. There's air quotes there for a reason. The problem is the whole process is extremely, well, it was expensive for me. I can't speak for anybody else's pockets. If you got it like that, that's cool, that's fine. My insurance wasn't covering it. So the process with cold capping is you put like a little cap on the top of your head, and it essentially freezes the hair follicles. That is because when you're doing chemo, it causes your body to overheat. When your body gets overheated, the hair follicles fall out. So the process of cold capping is to keep the hair from falling out. I think they told me it was going to be $360 per session. And I had to do 6 chemo sessions. So every time you had to do chemo, you would have to do the cold capping at the same time. I wasn't interested in doing that only because prior to me ever having breast cancer, I had what is called a form of alopecia called CCCA. You can Google it. I'm not going to pronounce it because it's a lot of words. So I was like, I was already losing my hair, so it didn't really bother me anyway. Now, if you want to do it, that's cool. It's fine. But there's still no like 100% guarantee that you're going to keep your hair during that process. Another thing that I did not do before chemo, and I wasn't sure if I mentioned this in the last podcast or not either, I also decided not to do fertility treatment. That was my own personal choice. Only because the type of cancer that I had was aggressive and I wanted to get everything done quick, fast, in a hurry. I think they said instead of me starting in February, I would have started in April. I wasn't trying to do all that. If the time comes, if I'm ready and willing to have a child, I'll just adopt. because I got to put me first. So I did 6 rounds of chemo. The side effects that I had outside of the body tingling that I mentioned, and this is going to be a little TMI, but we're here now. You love me, I love you. We're all in this together.